Hey, moviegoers, how are you? This is Dimitri Panos here, and we're here for another episode of KDM, which stands for Kit Dimitri Movies, a new movie review show. And
Newish.
newish, yeah. We're only into our what would you say, 50th episode by now? Um, so and laughing away
Laughing away.
is my great colleague and friend and movie reviewer, Kit Bowen. She is the
Hi.
K of KDM.
And he's the D is for
I
Dimitri Panos, who's
I
my
thought that
very
was for
good friend.
dummy.
No.
But Dimitri, hey, what the so yes, so it's Kit Dimitri Movies, or short KDM. How are you? And today we are going to be talking about The Exorcist Believer. So I'm going to just put out a fair warning. This review is going to contain spoilers. It wasn't going to contain spoilers until I went on to IMDb, which I try to have up as reference, because sometimes I just forget names, actors' names,
Yeah.
sometimes even characters' names,
Yep.
sometimes even the movie I'm watching. So what? No, or reviewing. But so I went into IMDb, and right there in front of me, and this wasn't on a few days ago, they spoil.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about this spoiler. It's a big spoiler. And
But
if you have
really
not
doesn't
seen the movie,
much for the movie. I mean,
no, but it's a spoiler. If you haven't seen the movie, pause and please come back. Please come back.
because you want to hear this.
And also, I have to say, do not go on to IMDb to look up this movie. Just don't do it. Don't do it, because
You'll be spoiled.
it'll be spoiled, and then you'll be pissed off at us and not IMDb. And, well, hey, you are fairly
Warned.
that the spoiler. Yep, the spoiler. You've been exorcised. So the power of Christ compels you. Move on.
Yeah.
But so there you go. Well, The Exorcist Believer. Kit, I know you're not the biggest horror fan. I have seen horror movies with you. I can attest. It's actually, in some cases, kind of funny to watch a horror movie with Kit, who's not a fan. But we didn't get to see this movie together.
No.
We didn't see this movie together, which, we love watching movies together. But so go ahead. What's your statement?
Well, let me qualify the not liking horror movies. There are some horror movies that I actually do enjoy.
Okay.
They're more psychological, thrillery. I do like the ghost ones, like The Conjuring.
Fair.
I like those. I like The Ring. The ones I really don't like are the slasher ones. So I'm not a Halloween person. I'm not a Friday the 13th person. I'm not any of those slashers or torture porn, like Saws and the Hostel. Although the first Saw I thought was pretty good, but
Yeah.
that's just not my jam. Not my jam. Don't love them. I will watch them if I have to.
We'll
Now,
tolerate them.
demon movies. Demon movies really do actually scare them bejesus out of me for the most part. I mean, they're the ones who get into my head. I mean, sometimes the ghost ones do too, but that's more of a demon, like Conjuring. It's like the 3 o'clock in the morning thing. That's still to this day. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, why am I awake? Do I smell
Really?
I smell something weird? Is there, there is just sometimes that just flits through my little head.
Really?
So,
I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, yeah, I gotta go to the bathroom.
well, there's that. That's usually why I'm awake. Movies like Paranormal Activity scared me. And certainly it did.
Interesting.
Certainly the first Exorcist,
okay,
was
which we'll talk about. I think
terrifying.
we have to talk about the original Exorcist,
Oh, we will.
in this
But I'm
movie.
just saying
So,
that
right.
terrified me. Okay.
Yeah.
So I
So
didn't watch
why don't
any of
we
the sequels. I didn't watch any of the,
really? You
any
never
of no,
watched? No.
no,
Okay.
no.
Because there is I was reminded last night talking to a friend who actually wrote a really good book about the Exorcist legacy.
Right.
The
We'll
50
talk about
years
that. Yeah.
later. But the
But
movie takes from the series The Exorcist, which I never watched. But
no. But also
anyways,
there's Exorcism of Emily Rose. That was really terrifying too. Another three
sure.
o'clock in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
morning thing. But this one, okay, so let's talk
All
about
right. So
exercise.
yes,
Exercise. Exercise.
let's exercise. Oh, Lordy knows I need it. I need it. I would like to exercise this stomach. But in any case, we can go into so I always ladies first.
All right.
Your thoughts on The Exorcist Believer.
Ugh.
Well, there that says it all. Goodbye, folks. Thanks for
I
tuning in
mean,
today.
not once was I terrified. Let's just say that. Yeah, I mean, it kind of started off interesting, I guess the basic premise, again, we won't get too into the plot because it really doesn't matter that much. Well, I guess it matters a little bit. This this photographer, um, who I guess they go to Africa or some African country somewhere. They work.
No, they're in Haiti. He and his
Haiti.
wife.
Oh, that's right, Haiti. I'm
They're
sorry,
in
Haiti.
Haiti on what seems to be a vacation,
Right,
and he is
and
a
she's
photographer, and
right,
yeah,
and
and
she's
she's
pregnant.
very pregnant.
Yes. And they have a tragedy that happens, or
Yep, big
earthquake,
earthquake.
big
Yeah,
earthquake, and she's severely wounded in
she's
it.
critically injured,
Yeah,
and
critically injured.
yeah, she's critically
And
injured from this
so
earthquake.
the doctors basically say you have to choose between one or the other. We can't save both the child and the mom, so you have to choose. So then we don't know what he chooses. Well, we figure out what
Well,
he
we know
chooses because we jump
it goes
13
to
years.
black, and then we jump 13 years.
Yeah, and he's living there with his daughter, who was
Yeah,
played
in
by
Virginia.
she was actually quite good, Lydia Jewett.
Mm-hmm.
Lydia Jewett. Anyway, she's a typical 13-year-old, and living life and missing her mom, and he's a little, what the other point too, when they are in Haiti, which is very spiritual country, voodoo and all of that, but also just in general, I think a very spiritual. She has a blessing put on her unborn child by these, Shaw ladies, shaman ladies,
Mm-hmm.
and she was very moved by that. So you have this sort of blessing over this baby kind of thing. So just keep that in mind. And so then 13 years later, they're living in wherever they're living in
Virginia.
Virginia.
They're living in Virginia. It's weird. I don't believe it was too far away from where the original Exorcist movie
Oh,
took
DC, that's
place,
right. I
which I
forgot.
believe is DC.
Georgetown.
Yeah,
Georgetown, yeah.
yeah. They weren't in
Okay.
Georgetown, but
No,
it's
it's
Virginia.
close. It's close. And then, so this little girl, she's gonna go have a night out with her friend, and and the dad's like, okay, you have to be home by dinner. And then you jump to see the friend, and she's another 13-year-old girl, and she's kind of comes from a very Christian family. And she's played by Olivia O'Neill. And then you see them after school going off into the woods because
Mm-hmm.
basically the what's her name now? I've forgotten. Angela, the girl,
Angela.
she
Mm-hmm.
wants to connect with her mom. And so they say, oh, let's go to this place. Apparently, if we light a candle and we do this, we can maybe hear spirits, blah, blah, blah. Then that's it. That's all we hear. And then you jump to the time, and the kids aren't home yet. The girls aren't home yet. So then the parents are flipping out, and it's like, where are they? And so there's this mass search for them. And then 3 days later, they show up in this 30 miles away in this farmer's barn, with their feet all cut up and everything. So they took their shoes off and they walked all this way. The little girls don't know what happened to them, of course, but then they're acting very strangely
Yes.
because because they're possessed. Yeah. So then it becomes, how do we fix our girls? How do we save our girls? And the character played by Leslie Odom Jr., who I like him a lot, Victor, his Victor Fielding. He
Yeah.
he seeks out some help and ends up
Well, he
convinced.
doesn't. I mean,
Well,
he
he
doesn't
kind of
technically.
does.
No, he doesn't technically. I think it's important to state that Leslie Odom Jr. and Angela, he raises Angela agnostic.
Right. Right.
And it's stated that he believed once, but the loss of his wife, understandably, made him a little bit bitter.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
and so he raised Angela that way. They live in a very Catholic area in
Right. So his
Virginia.
next door neighbor, played by Ann Dowd, is a Catholic.
Yeah. And
She's a
and
nurse.
and
I
uh
love Ann Dowd.
yeah,
She could do
the
she
other
could do just about anything, although I think she phones it in a little bit with this one, but that's okay. She's allowed.
Catherine is from a very like Catholic type family,
Christian.
or it's a Christian. Sorry, forgive me. So, and he is being offered like, oh, why don't you do this? And he's like, nope. And it was Ann Dowd's character actually that
Right.
said,
And she
look,
hands him this
I don't
book.
want to interfere.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
However, well, it's important. Like
Yeah.
he actually even said no to this book, which
But then he reads it and it speaks to him. And it's of course written by Chris McNeil, who is Ellen Bernstein's character from the original Exorcist.
correct.
And she's written this book to sort of detail her feelings and everything that had happened to her and her daughter. And then when he goes to see her, he finds out they're estranged. Chris and Reagan are estranged, and they haven't seen each other for several years. And in fact, Chris doesn't even know where Reagan is because she went into hiding. So there's that. Anyway, so my feeling about the whole thing. So of course, it comes down to, how are we going to help these girls? So I, first of all, it was just not terrifying to me, not like the first one. I mean, the first one was just so terrifying. So this one, it's more about, I feel like they were just sort of lecturing us about coming together religiously as a whole, because you've got all these different factions of religion. You have the Catholic, you've got the Christian minister, you have another sort of shaman type woman who comes in, who has, some of her beliefs and whatnot, more spiritual. And then you've got Leslie, who's, just wants his daughter back, so he doesn't really believe in anything. And then you've got the family of the other little girl who are very Christian. And, so you have all these factions coming together to try to exorcise the demons out of these little girls.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I thought some of the performances were good. Those little girls, that must be terrifying. Or maybe it's fun to play. I don't know. I know Linda Blair has come out and said a few things about playing that, playing someone possessed like that as a child. But it just didn't do anything. It just kind of left me dry. I didn't really care that much. Maybe I cared a little bit more with the Leslie, with Victor and his daughter Angela. I kind of felt that relationship more than I felt the other relationship. The idea of everyone coming together kind of to work together as all the different factions. It was interesting, I guess. But ultimately, yeah, I just didn't really care that much about it all. And it didn't scare me one little bit. And I'm not sure what, we'll talk about this too, but they're apparently, was it Universal bought the
And
rights for
Blumhouse,
this?
yep.
They bought the rights to the Exorcist
From
trilogy.
Morgan Creek, yep.
Right.
Yeah,
So
they bought the rights for $400 million.
they plan on making
They
several of these movies. So we'll see how this works.
they planned on a trilogy.
Right.
So,
So
yeah.
we'll
So it
see.
doesn't sound you were too keen on it.
Not too keen.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
too.
okay. It was okay.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
I wanted to believe. I wanted to believe. No, and that's and I mean that seriously. When I found out the Blumhouse got the rights, that they had hired David Gordon Green and Danny McBride. Now, look, I know I know I may be in the minority here, but I was a very big fan of what David Gordon Green and company had done with Halloween and bringing that back. Now, most people agree Halloween from 2018 was the best of the series. I don't disagree with that, but I did enjoy Halloween Kills, and I did enjoy Halloween Ends. I enjoyed what they did, and they obviously were fans, being Danny McBride, and then David Gordon Green. And I thought they did a really good job. So hearing that they were going to continue this story of The Exorcist, and it was Blumhouse, who has a fairly decent track record, I believe, in horror.
Right.
I was kind of looking forward to it. And then I had a few, and then I think by the end of the day, I was like, perhaps The Exorcist should just be left alone at this point. And I'm going to bring up two things that you mentioned specifically, because there were kind of things that took me out of this movie. One of them is when you said that Catherine and Angela take their little walkabout into the woods and they hold their little awaken the spirits thing.
Right.
Okay, so that the seance Ouija board type horror movie trope, I mean, that's the best that they could, like, why? To me, that was such a big mistake, because it's such a tired plot device, because it never works out well. It never works out well when this happens. And so, and again, it's almost as if, and this is where I was surprised, as much as David Gordon Green and company were fans of Halloween, it's like, well, I get that you're probably a fan of The Exorcist, but I think what makes The Exorcist kind of scary is, number one, it plays like a drama. And there's no seance that brings the devil. It's the randomness of it all. Right. That makes it terrifying. And that it's this little girl, Reagan, who gets possessed. And we're going to talk a little more Exorcist later. So that was kind of a problem with me. It's like, why did we have to have, to me, why did we have to have that when it makes it less terrifying? Right. You know, because that opens the door and now they're possessed, and we got to figure it out. Okay. Right. Then you mentioned halfway through the movie with Chris McNeil. I forget what his character's name is. Victor. Right. So he seeks her out, and the trailers did a really good job here, I thought, because they don't mention what happens to Reagan. Right. Now, what you may or may not, if you didn't watch the series, I was reminded of this the other day, is they took a plot point or narrative from the television series, which focuses around Chris McNeil. And it's about, she writes this book that Reagan didn't want her to write, causes all this friction, and they go their separate ways. Now, if you hadn't watched the series, I hadn't watched the series, and I was just going by the trailer. I just thought maybe Reagan, they were going to pass on. Right. But the movie, halfway through the movie, it shows its cards. And by saying blatantly, nah, I wrote this book, she got pissed off, I don't even know where she fled to. I don't know where she is. I don't know what she's doing. And then I just sat there going, what? Come on. Like, really? Like, do you think I'm that dumb? Like, okay. I know where this is going. Right. So when, lo and behold, we get to the end of the movie, and surprise, who shows up at the end of the movie? None other than Linda Blair as Reagan. And I'm like, you gave this away. And again, anybody who goes to the movies on a regular basis, like you and I, or even halfway, who understands the mechanics of a screenplay, like, you just gave that away. And that bothered me. It just really bothered me. And you just did two things in this movie that were crazy, that it
Right.
just didn't make sense to me.
Right.
You make up another point as like it wasn't scary and
There
such.
wasn't.
Well, but here's why I think why. I think
Right.
the possession movie is also kind of done and over with.
Yeah. Yes.
Within the past
Yes.
decade, we've seen a lot of these movies. A lot. What the Exorcist Believer's sin is, it doesn't really differentiate itself from the most recent batch of movies. Now,
Right.
I can look at the 1973 Exorcist and say that movie, even today, looks different.
Right.
But since you've had The Conjuring, since you've had Insidious, since you've had like Annabelle, or even Smile, like we've seen these possession movies like time and time again, and
Right.
they're all kind of looking the same. And for the Exorcist Believer, it seemed tired, and hence
Right.
it can't be scary because I've seen this all done before, and in some cases, not even in better movies.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
right, so
Yeah.
it didn't look any different than anything else. Getting all the religions in almost seemed like a checklist. Oh, we have to have this religion, and we have to have this
Right.
religion, and it really does forget, I think, a main thing about the 1973 movie, and this is by admission too, by William
Right.
Peter Blatty and people like William Friedkin. It's not a religious movie. It
Right.
wasn't meant to condemn religion. It wasn't,
Right.
but it. So this movie is supposed to be a planned trilogy. This movie to me seemed like a 2-hour setup,
Right. Yeah.
and I'm just like, I was very surprised. I was surprised, not in a good way, because I have all my faith in David Gordon Green and company, because I really thought they did a really good job with Halloween. They got it.
Right.
David Gordon Green still knows how to direct kind of like a suspense scene and things like that, but nothing seemed different from the crop of movies that we have seen within the past decade.
Right.
And it
Right.
still doesn't look as good or better,
Right.
very close to the original 50 years ago, 1973 Exorcist. And Ellen Burstyn, this is an Academy Award winning actor. She got nominated, if I'm correct, for playing Chris McNeil.
I think she did. She did. Yeah. Yeah. I think she
And
did. Yeah.
she's a fantastic actor in her own right. To me, in this movie, she seemed like Tangina.
Yes.
From Poltergeist. She was just like, oh, don't do this. Oh, I know what this is. Like, she was the chorus, like saying, oh, yeah, I've had experience with this before, and this and that. And I'm like, she wasn't given anything really great to go with. So yeah, I guess that ends up being my take on Exorcist Believer. It will be stunning to see what the grosses are going to be.
Yeah.
And one, another thing, you tell me if you agree or maybe disagree with me on this. So it's easy to say, to compare it to like Halloween, because it's another, they're going for the same thing. Let's hire this actress who, she was in this legendary, iconic movie. And it, people will make the comparisons to Halloween because that's what David Gordon Green, Danny McBride did. But I say for people, it's not a good comparison whatsoever, because Halloween and the Exorcist franchise, let's say, they're two very different. I think they're two different kinds of horror movies. Number one,
Oh, yeah.
and right, and in Halloween you have victim and serial killer, Laurie Strode, strong female character, and you have Michael Myers, and it's putting them back together again.
Yeah.
With Laurie Strode suffering from, she's the final girl. She's the classic final girl. But The Exorcist, Chris McNeil is not the main character. In fact, in this movie, by her own admission, and it is true, she is not part of the exorcism that takes place in the 1973 movie.
Right.
She's a great character. She's a great actress. But is she a character that I want to follow into a movie? And she's basically a support character in this movie. And she's
Right.
the only, until the very end of the movie, she's the nostalgic tether where Leslie Odom Jr.'s Victor is the main character. He's the Chris McNeil kind of this movie. So right off the bat, you're dealing with you're dealing with Jamie Lee Curtis as
Right.
classic final girl. She was the lead. And you're dealing with the character who was a support character, albeit she was fantastic as Reagan's mom. But it's hard to follow her, really. And the movies doesn't follow her. So that is why I believe it's a bad comparison.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I do, because Michael Myers is I mean, that's a monster character you can always tell stories about, you know what I mean? So yeah, for me, doing a Halloween reboot made sense. It did, although I didn't really love those that much. I know you liked them a lot more, but you know, those kinds of movies could live on forever. But The Exorcist, yeah, I mean, it's really about demon possession, period. And the demons who, you know, want to or seeking revenge for whatever. And we have seen several of these movies, and some of them have been really good. Some of them have been pretty terrifying, and you know, including the original. So there's no need. It's just not necessary.
They didn't bring anything new to the
new.
table. They didn't bring anything new to the table. And I'm gonna throw something else out there too, regarding the original Exorcist. Again, you know, it was filmed as a drama, which I think that is what makes it terrifying. It makes the characters real, even to the cop that's in the movie. But it's easy to watch The Exorcist because this makes sense, and to say what The Exorcist, The Exorcist is about the corruption of innocence. You know, look at this little girl; she's agnostic. She doesn't. It makes sense that the devil would want to take her over and show her as an example and corrupt her and make her evil, and she does all these horrifying things,
right?
Especially in 1973, and I still say still horrifying today.
Yes,
but then I had read this book, which actually changed my perspective of the movie, and now I hold it in even higher regard. What I said is still valid. It fits the mold of that movie.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from the perspective of, and this comes from William Peter Blatty, he wrote the book of which it was based, the screenplay, and it's not about. Reagan's not the target.
Right.
Reagan is not the target. It is the priests. Yeah. It is Father Merrin, who we see has somewhat knowledge of this demon.
Right.
And then it is Kareth, who is a priest that's teetering from faith, non-faith, and he's a priest. They are the big fish. Yeah. Reagan is the small fish. She's the bait, literally, for these two priests to come together. And if you watch that and you go into that perspective, it really does kind of change the narrative plot, the way that perspective. And if you take that out, and this was another problem that I had with The Exorcist Believer, I kept on thinking, who's the real target here? Mm-hmm. Like, if they really were paying attention to The Exorcist,
right?
Who is the target? And then, you know, we get Linda Blair at the end, right? And your only simplest assumption is she's the target. It's like, to me, if that ends up being the case, that to me is like, it's not fun. No, it's not.
There is no target. It's just some, you know, I just felt like it was just kind of like I said, I felt like it was an afternoon school special about religion and demons.
School special. That's funny. Yeah, you mentioned The Conjuring. Yeah, you mentioned The Conjuring, which is a really scary movie.
Super scary.
And there's a possession that takes place in the last quarter of that movie, which is really scary.
Yes.
What happens there? That's very scary,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
to be honest with you, all the Conjuring movies have been kind of creepy to me. I mean, they haven't all kind of hit as hard as that first one did, but
mm,
just knowing that they had all of those objects in that room, and then so that third
right,
Conjuring movie, I don't know. For me, I thought that third Conjuring movie was because me personally, I was like, what happened if all those things got out, and then you get to
right,
see all those things come alive. I don't know. It's kind of like Cabin in the Woods when they
right, right,
when they're
right,
in the elevator and they see all the different horrifying scenarios that could happen.
right.
And then they all come out at once. So yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff is interesting and scary and original in a way. Um, but there's just no need to do this again. There just isn't, because like you said, there's just so many other possession movies that this just fell by the wayside. It's just not the only reason why people might really want to do it is to see Ellen Burstyn and Linda Blair reunited,
Well,
maybe.
listen, I don't know how it was in your theater. When I saw it earlier this week, and Ellen Burstyn took the screen or comes onto the screen, she got applause. So they're obviously Exorcist fans in the theater. And
Not
again,
when I saw it.
really, and again, the
And
woman
I saw it
is,
with Jen Pop.
oh really, and
Yeah.
she's Ellen Burstyn's like 90.
Yeah.
And she was, she was pretty, she's still pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And then when Linda Blair comes in at the end, there was more applause in my theater. And then
Uh,
like
that
when it went
that made
to
me feel that
credits,
did make me have some feels for sure.
really, because to me, I again, that middle of the movie ruined it. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, guess who's gonna show up now? Oh, okay. And now we're gonna do two other movies.
Yeah.
But the audience that I watched it with stuck around through the credits to see if there was going to be a button, and I was there's no what button is there going to be? Like they didn't do this before, unless they're going to try something new. Atmospherically, it was fine. The scenes that were in the hospital with the two girls, some of it was creepy. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
will say this, it David Gordon Green delivered a creepiness factor that
He
was all
did.
right. When Victor was in his bathroom brushing his teeth,
Yes. Yes.
and all
Yes.
of a
Yes.
sudden you hear the light switch go
Yeah.
click,
Yeah. Yeah.
click, and like
Yeah.
his daughter's there, and then he walks her to bed, and like literally he turns around and she's right behind him. Like, it had the creep factor in there.
Yeah.
But
But not enough.
not enough, and most of it just didn't. It didn't look any different than what we have seen within the past 10 years.
Right. Now, this is kind of, we'll give our rating here in just a quick
Yeah.
minute, but I just want to, only because, we're talking about a movie that supposedly is supposed to scare us or thrill us or whatever, and it just
Mhm.
not original, not anything near what we want to do. I ended up watching on Hulu. I know you're not a big streamer person, but there is a
Okay.
movie now on Hulu with Caitlin Dever called No One
Yes.
Will Save You,
Uh-huh.
and it's an alien invasion type of film.
Yes,
And
it is.
it was terrifying to me. I thought some of that,
Okay.
and original in a way, because you just didn't know what was going to end up happening. And the way it ended, I'm like, wow, that was kind of weird, but kind of cool. So here's a movie, an alien invasion movie, which we've seen
A
3,000 times
bazillion times.
before, bazillion times, but
Bazillion.
told in a way from one perspective, and pretty
Mm-hmm.
much in one evening, one night, or maybe two nights, and one person. That's it. It reminded me of that Twilight Zone episode with Agnes Moorehead, where she's
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
ah,
And it was very
ah.
quiet place-ish. Look,
But I
first,
thought it was fantastic. So now that's
yeah,
a movie.
fantastic to me is a little bit hyperbole.
Well,
Listen,
I
I
liked it
thought Caitlin
a
Dever was
lot.
fantastic.
I liked it a lot.
I defy you to explain that ending to me.
Well,
I
I don't care.
defy
It
you.
doesn't matter. It doesn't
See,
matter.
see, to me that matters a lot. for any movie. But again, it's a streaming movie. Caitlin Dever. I'll put it to you this way: the first 10 minutes of the movie, I was like, "Why the hell is this on Hulu? Like, why are we like? Why didn't they give it the proper TLC?
Oh,
Seriously? No. Listen. Hey, I'm sorry,
I
but
know, I know,
no,
I know.
nope. I listened. The first
Well,
10 minutes had me. The first 10 minutes of that movie had me, and I said, why did this not get the proper tender loving care and be made for a theatrical experience? Because the first 10 minutes, to your point, was different. It was thrilling. It was suspenseful. Caitlin Dever's performance, she's far better on a big screen than being stunted on a small screen. She deserves to be on a big screen. She's one of those faces that she's, I mean, she's been in a lot of movies yet. I
yeah.
still think she's underutilized, and she should be in big screen entertainment, right? The
Well,
movie going experience. And then after that, the movie just goes off in these ways that I'm like, oh, okay, this is why this was not a theatrical movie. They
I
could
liked it.
have tried to. I know a lot of people do. I think, but I just, look,
Well,
Caitlin did
anyway,
a
I'm
great
just
job.
my
But
point.
I
We're not
get what you're
reviewing that.
saying.
We're
No,
not reviewing that.
And I get what you're saying, that how do you have like a good movie that tries to be original here, but it wasn't really based off of a franchise. And it's what I was saying earlier. When you had what David Gordon Green and Danny McBride did with Halloween, they at least brought it up to the modern age, and they took TLC. Now listen, it was because of their pitch to John Carpenter. I mean, that's the other thing too. John Carpenter came on board for this Halloween. Jamie Lee Curtis, big time on board. Whereas this movie, they were trying to get the Blatty residents on board, and they said no way.
Yeah,
And
because
they just kind of missed the boat.
yeah, it's like it's definitely one of those things where they should have just left well enough alone.
Yeah,
But
and they spent
we'll see. We'll see
$400
how much it
million.
makes. I know we'll see how much money this makes.
So what would you give it
Off
for a review, from a rating standpoint? What would you give it?
two.
You're giving it a 2. Okay. I think I gave it, like, I said it was 3, only because of, I like Leslie Odom Jr.'s performance. The man, again, when you have a performance that somewhat elevates mediocrity, he was still believable.
Yeah.
And the relationship between he and his daughter, I thought was
Yeah,
really,
it was good.
really good. And you said this earlier, Olivia O'Neill and Lydia Jewett as Catherine and Angela, I give them props for what they may have had to endure
Right.
in the filming of this movie, because in real life, they're probably sweet as pie, the kids, and they had to do this, and what they had to endure, whether it be the makeup and all this, and what they had to say and or do. I give them props. I thought they were really decent.
Here's another special podcast we can do.
Yeah.
It's kids playing. It's kids in horror movies. Like these, they're always kids. Always the kids in the back. Like somehow they get corrupted, and it's just. And how do these poor little actors who, it's like it's just It's
putting them through the ringer, and because it's easy, it's easy to relate, because kids are the perfect symbolism,
right,
for any story that you're trying to tell,
right,
of young innocence. They don't have worldly views. They're just trying to get along through school, trying to get but there's an innocence there. So I get that. They were really good. So that's why I give it 3. It's probably a little bit more liberal than yours. I get it. The movie didn't anger me. I have to say, I don't understand, because I've seen the reviews on this. It has, I think, on Rotten Tomatoes, it was like currently at a 22%. You pointed that out to me, did you not? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was looking at some, and there's will give you eye cancer. I'm like, nah, that's a little bit much. It's like, it's like the worst horror movie of the year. And I'm like, really? You didn't did you watch Nun 2? Because Nun 2 is still my worst horror movie of the year. It's not, I don't think this movie is as bad. There's some craft to this movie.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. Eye cancer? Listen, you've been shielding yourselves from bad movies. I mean, I think you and I go to enough movies that, like, if we see a bad movie, I'm not going to call out. I'll call out a bad movie when a bad movie is awful.
Yeah.
Nun 2 was awful. And I don't think The Exorcist Believer was to that level of badness. However, I will have to say, man, Universal and Blumhouse, you're committed now. I don't know what you're going to do. Like, I get it. You could take the 400 million maybe and do it as a write-off if the movie doesn't quite hit. But next week, it's going to be running into a Swiftie wall.
Swifties.
So yeah, the movie needed to do better, and it needed to put its best foot forward. And that's what Halloween 2018 did. People were probably skeptical going in, and then they saw it. So Halloween Kills did okay. Third one, not so much. But
well, here's the thing. I think the Halloween reboot would not have worked because I mean, they did try to make some without Jamie Lee Curtis, but it would not have worked if Jamie Lee hadn't come on board. There's no way.
I don't disagree. And that was a big get. And I say it's even bigger get than getting Ellen Burstyn. And I mean no disrespect to her at all. They're just two different things.
Yeah.
And again, as a fan of The Exorcist, that's the one horror movie that still affects me to this day.
Oh yeah.
I mean, still, like, I watch it and I still get creeped out. I mean, Halloween 1978 is my favorite horror movie, but The Exorcist, done in 1973, whew, that movie still bother me.
I didn't even see it on the big screen.
I
didn't even see it on the big screen. I saw it on TV once.
I was 7. Yeah, I mean,
just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
I was like 7.
Oh, that's too young.
so yeah, I mean, like, so there was no way. However, I do remember the news about The Exorcist. I remember
me too.
Reading in the Boston Globe in the movie section about how churches were protesting the movie. I remember
people fainted and people ran out, and
it was I mean, before it was even a term, pop culture, it was a cultural movie event.
Yes.
When it came out, and it did win some Academy Awards.
Yes.
But it's still a movie today that I watch that's still like,
watch it again. I've only seen it a couple of times. I
don't want to. It's hard. It's like, and to watch Linda Blair's performance.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Is like, some of the stuff in 1973. Again, I think it's harrowing today, but 1973, people like,
forget about it.
What
that
she does
Jaws.
Yes. Yeah. And and then,
Jaws did to water what, and then Exorcist did to addicts. Jaws did to swimming in the ocean.
Or stairs.
Addicts.
No, I know. I get it. I get it. I was talking about The Exorcist steps.
Forget about it.
But yeah, and then came some of the sequels. The Exorcist 2, The Heretic is that movie's pretty much unwatchable, but I recommend people to watch it. You can Mystery Science Theater the hell out of that movie. I'm not kidding. And then Exorcist 3 came out, which, aside from a kind of wonky third act, what the movie is putting out there is kind of like, it's very interesting. And there is one jump scare in that movie that is, it's still today, still works. And then you had like Dominion, the prequel. Like,
Again, look, Hollywood is notorious for this kind of BS. They take something and they go squeeze it out, squeeze.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? Even after they fail,
I know.
Like, even after like Heretic failed, it was a failure. Exorcist 3 maybe a little bit better, but still no, it didn't make waves. And then, but I understand Universal and Blumhouse going after this, and I understand the thought behind it. It's like, look at the success we had with this. We can do the same with this, and it's deserved. It is deserved, but do you think
Is
it's
it?
kind of like over, like, and it makes me wonder, did not one creative executive, whether they be at Universal or at Blumhouse, go, I'm sorry, like, haven't we done movies like this before already? Like, could we just, like, if we took The Exorcist, if we just called it The Believer and we took Exorcist out of this, like, you know, it's by putting The Exorcist in there that I
Yep.
think you
Hurts
give
it.
it high hopes. And
Yeah.
what they did before, you give it a higher, at least I went in with higher hopes.
Right.
I walked out feeling, did your audience like not like it at all?
I
To
don't
your
think so.
knowledge?
Nobody said anything. No one clapped. Everybody just got up and left.
And they got up like as soon as it faded to black, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
hi, Linda Blair. And thank God she did not come in tap dancing. I'm referring to Heretic, Exorcist 2.
Okay, please don't.
So, but
Enough. Ugh. Yeah. So yeah, no, they didn't seem to really love it.
they didn't love it. Huh? You don't think. Yeah. So my audience, I don't know. They stayed to
Yeah, there were no
the
like
majority of them.
there was no there was
Oh,
none of
nobody
that.
did that. Oh yeah.
No,
See,
everybody's completely silent through the whole thing.
what time show did you go to? I'm curious.
At 5 o'clock? It was
Oh,
pretty
fair
crowded
enough.
too.
Yeah.
Pretty crowded.
Oh well. Well, there you go. We are both non-believers. You with a 2, me with a 3, and I didn't believe in it. And man, oh Manischewitz, they're gonna the power of Christ now compels you to make a better movie.
Favorite part of the movie though was the trailers at the beginning. I'm like,
oh, what did you see? I didn't get trailers.
I haven't seen some of the trailers. I'm like, oh, that looks good. Oh, that
what
looks
stuck
good.
out? What stuck out?
Shoot, now I can't remember. I just hold on, wait a minute.
Great. Throw that matzo ball out there.
The Freddy thing, Five Nights at Freddy's.
Five Nights at Freddy
looks kind of fun.
It actually does look kind of fun.
I know. The Killers of the Flower Moon, of course, I've seen that trailer. But there was, what was that? Now I have to remember again. I almost texted you like, oh my gosh, this movie looks really great.
Should we do like charades? Like, how many words is the trailer? What's it about? See, I didn't get trailers.
Hold on.
I didn't get
That's
trailers.
right. That's right.
Yeah, I didn't.
Well, anyway, I'll think about it. I'll text you and we'll talk about it later. But anyway, I'm excited for the fall and winter. So
you and I both. And all right, well, there you have it for Exorcist the Believer. Thank you very much, folks, for tuning in. Hey, if you've watched, what do you think of The Exorcist Believer?
Yeah.
Also, tell us your stories, if you have any at all, about how the original Exorcist scared the hell out of you. Yeah. And if you do watch it again, and if you already didn't have that perspective, check it out, and you'll see that it's a little bit different. And I will stress, the movie plays like a drama, which makes it that much more terrifying because Chris McNeil and Reagan are real, as well as the priests and all the people around them in DC, in Virginia, Georgetown. So thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. Kit, what movie are we seeing next together? Do we know? Do we have anything?
Well, it's not the Swiftie movie. I'll have to be the one after that. So I don't know off the top of my head. Well, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, I would love to get an invite for that.
Yeah, I think that would be very nice.
So yeah, so that'll be great. Can't wait to watch a movie with you again. It's been too long. You've been traveling too much.
I know.
But, you got to make wages. So I appreciate it, but I do love watching movies with you. I wish you all could watch movies with us. You never know.
Never know. You might be there. Yeah.
Yep. So say hello, but say hello in the comments for sure. Thank you all very much for watching. Kit, thank you for your friendship and being a colleague and a great, just a great person to bounce all these awesome, fun ideas with. And we will see everybody else at the movies. Take